Your air conditioner has been running since 9 o'clock this morning. It is now 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The thermostat in your hallway says 76, but you set it to 68 over 3 hours ago. The machine is straining. The compressor is humming outside in the heat, vibrating against the concrete pad. But the indoor temperature has not dropped a single degree. It is not going to. Above your head, in a dark, silent space you have not climbed into since the day you signed the papers to buy this house, the temperature right now is 142 degrees. That is hot enough to burn the back of your hand if you touch the rafters. It is a silent, heavy furnace resting directly on top of your living space. Every single minute that heat sits up there cooking, your electric meter is spinning outside, its metal disc whirring in a blur. And somebody in an office building 4 states away is getting a little bit richer. On our family farm, built by hand in 1934, we have never paid an electric bill. Not one, not ever. We live entirely off the grid, independent of the wires that drape across the countryside. Yet the upstairs bedroom where my wife and I sleep on the hottest night of August, with the summer sun beating down on that roof all day long, stays cooler than yours does with $3,000 of modern machinery fighting to protect it. Let me be plain. I want to tell you why. I want to tell you what was built into this house nearly a century ago, what was built into the homes before that, and what the carpenters in our community still build into every new roof we raise. I am going to tell you the part that should make you angry. None of this is a secret. None of it. It is simple science, written down in basic building manuals for over 200 years. You were just never told. By the time we are done, you will know exactly what to look for in your own attic this weekend. You will understand why the modern practice of sealing your roof is a $3,000 summer mistake. You will know how a traditional $4 physical shield can stop radiant heat before it ever enters your home. And you will understand why the contractor who sold you your last roof never mentioned a single word of it. Stay with me. The first thing you have to understand is that your attic is lying to you about what it is for. You have been taught to think of it as just another room in your house, a dusty ceiling pocket meant for cardboard boxes and old holiday decorations. It is not. In a house built properly, the attic is what we call a buffer. It is a sacrificial space. Its entire purpose is to take the beating of the day so your living rooms do not have to. When the sun strikes your roof, the shingles absorb that energy and grow hot. The attic is designed to catch that heat, hold it momentarily, and then let it go. It is supposed to hand that heat back to the sky before the thermal energy can migrate downward into the bedrooms where your children sleep. That is the whole job of an attic. It is an engine of release. It must breathe the heat out. But somewhere around the late 1960s, the modern building industry decided they were going to do things differently. The builders on the grid decided to seal the attic up. They stuffed the floor cavities with thick blankets of pink fiberglass insulation. They cut 2 small, inadequate vents in the gable ends, ran a thin plastic strip along the ridge, and called it a finished job. Then they sold the homeowner a larger, more expensive air conditioner to make up for the heat that now had nowhere to go. That is the trade they made for you, without ever asking your permission. The moment they sealed those spaces, your attic stopped being a buffer. It became a heat battery. The sun strikes the roof shingles, transferring shortwave solar radiation through the wood deck. Once inside, this energy transforms into long-wave radiant heat. In a sealed attic, this heat is trapped. It has no escape route. The air temperature rises to 140 degrees, and that heat begins to saturate everything. It takes into the wooden joists, the storage boxes, the drywall of your ceiling, and eventually the very mattress you lie on. Your air conditioner is not cooling your house. It is fighting a furnace that modern construction practices installed on top of your head. We never made that mistake. We could not afford to. When you do not plug your home into a coal-fired power plant, you do not have the luxury of using a $3,000 compressor to hide a poorly designed roof. Every choice in our building had to work on its own physical merits under the real weight of the August sun, with no machine to rescue us from a mistake. The piece of our houses you have likely seen from the road, but perhaps never understood, is the small wooden tower sitting on the very peak of the roof. The modern builders call it a cupola. In our community, we have always just called it the roof box or the lantern. My family crossed the ocean from the Palatinate in 1838. My great-great-grandfather made that journey with nothing but a Bible, a chest of hand-forged carpenter's tools, and the inherited knowledge of how to build a shelter that would keep his family safe under the heavy heat of a Midwestern summer. The roof boxes you see on modern subdivision homes, the ones with the multi-car garages and complex roof lines, are purely decorative. They are nailed shut from the inside. They are filled with synthetic foam. They are merely a costume. But on an old farmhouse, the roof box is the most important mechanical system in the entire structure. It is the engine that drives the movement of air. Here's how it works. Hot air expands, becomes lighter, and rises. That is not a folk belief or a community tradition. That is just physics. It is an unchangeable law of thermodynamics. In a sealed modern attic, that rising hot air hits the underside of the roof deck and is trapped. It builds pressure, pushing downward against your ceiling insulation. But in a house with a functional roof box, that rising column of hot air has an escape hatch. It climbs naturally through an open vertical shaft in the center of the house and exits through the louvered wooden slats on all four sides of the tower. But that is only half of the engine. The half that matters far more is what happens at the very bottom of the house. When that column of hot air escapes through the roof box, it creates a gentle negative pressure zone inside the home. It must be replaced. It draws cooler, denser air in from the lowest points of the house, through the shaded cellar doors, through the crawl spaces, and through the windows opened on the north side of the building. The entire volume of air inside the structure begins to migrate. The house begins to breathe. Modern building scientists have a fancy term for this. They call it the stack effect, or buoyancy-driven ventilation. You can find thick, expensive textbooks in university libraries explaining this exact phenomenon, written by men with many letters after their names. We do not need the textbooks. We just call it building a house, right? Last August, on an afternoon when the thermometer on our porch read 93 degrees in the shade, I climbed the wooden ladder into the attic of our farmhouse. This space sits directly beneath the cedar shingles, protected by a roof box built by my grandfather 92 years ago. The temperature in that attic was 78 degrees. 78! The wood of the roof deck above my head was hot to the touch, but the air moving through the space was cool enough that I did not break a sweat standing there. Across the road, my neighbor lives in a modern home built in 1971. It is sealed tight, insulated with fiberglass bats crammed directly against the rafters with no functional roof box. On that same afternoon, under the same sun, in the same county, I walked over to his house with a digital thermometer. His attic was 136 degrees. 60 degrees of physical difference. He was burning electricity to run a 3-ton cooling unit, while our home was maintaining comfort using nothing but the natural laws of air pressure and temperature. Now, you are thinking, that is fine for an old farmhouse, but I cannot build a wooden tower on top of my roof this weekend. You are right. You cannot. And that is not what I am going to suggest you do, because there is another traditional method, a simple physical trick that sits inside our attics, and it is the part one hesitated to write about because it is the one thing the modern insulation and roofing industries would prefer you never discover. If you climb into the attic of our farmhouse and look up, nailed directly across the underside of the roof boards where the rafters meet the ridge, you will see a long, continuous strip of plain white cotton muslin fabric. It is not modern fiberglass. It is not synthetic vapor barrier. It is simple, untreated cotton cloth, the kind you can purchase at any dry goods store, for pennies. My grandfather put it there when he raised the rafters. His father did the same in the old cabin. We have used this method for as long as our elders can remember. Here is what that simple piece of cloth does, and it is something you can easily verify yourself if you understand the nature of heat. When the sun beats down on your roof shingles, they absorb that thermal energy. The wood of the roof deck beneath those shingles heats up, and that hot wood begins to radiate energy downward. But radiant heat does not travel the way convective heat does. It does not warm the air directly. Radiant heat travels in a straight electromagnetic wave, silent and invisible, through the air until it strikes a solid object. The thick insulation on your attic floor does nothing to stop this radiation. The radiant waves pass right through the airspace and strike the top surface of your fiberglass blankets, your electrical wiring, your wooden floor joists, and your ceiling drywall. They turn those solid materials into secondary radiators, which then push the heat directly down into your living spaces. The cotton cloth intercepts this wave. It acts as a low-mass radiant shield. Because it is suspended a few inches below the hot roof deck, it catches the straight-line radiant waves before they can reach the floor of your attic. Now, let me explain the physical beauty of this traditional method. During the humid summer nights, this untreated cotton naturally absorbs a tiny amount of moisture from the cool night air. When the sun rises the next morning and the roof deck begins to heat up, the cotton slowly releases that moisture back into the attic air. It is the exact same physical principle as wrapping a wet cotton cloth around your neck when you are working a hayfield in July. Any man who has spent a day behind a team of horses in the summer heat knows how that feels. As the moisture evaporates from the fibers of the cloth, it draws latent heat away from the surrounding air. The cotton stays cool. The air immediately beneath it stays cool. The radiant heat coming off the roof boards is neutralized before it can ever reach the floor of your attic. An average home requires about 4 yards of this plain, untreated cotton muslin to cover the ridgeline. It costs $4. It takes less than an hour of work with a simple hand stapler to install. I am not exaggerating the price, nor am I rounding down to catch your attention. $4 of material. Now ask yourself a simple question. In a country where the average homeowner spends thousands of dollars every year just to keep their living spaces livable during the summer, why is this simple physical shield not mentioned in a single modern building manual?
Why did your father never hear of it? Why did the roofing contractor who replaced your shingles a few years ago never offer this as an option? Think about who profits when your attic is allowed to run at 140 degrees. The utility companies profit. Every single degree of heat that penetrates your ceiling forces your air conditioning compressor to run longer and harder. A standard 3-ton central cooling unit pulls roughly 3,500 watts of electricity when it is straining against a hot attic. If your home is forced to fight that overhead furnace for an extra 4 or 5 hours every day through July and August, you are handing the power company an extra $60 to $100 every single month. Multiply that by the millions of homes across this land, and you are looking at billions of dollars in annual revenue that exists solely because modern houses are built to trap heat. The shingle manufacturers profit. An unventilated, boiling attic cooks your shingles from the underside. The extreme heat causes the volatile oils within the asphalt shingles to dry out and evaporate. The shingles become brittle, the protective mineral granules wash away with the rain, and the adhesive seal between the layers fails. A roof deck that should easily last 30 years is destroyed in 15. You are forced to buy a new roof twice as often as your grandfather did. That is not an accident of design. It is a highly profitable cycle of planned obsolescence. The insulation manufacturers profit. The heating and cooling contractors profit. The manufacturers of synthetic spray foam profit. There is an entire industrial complex built upon selling you expensive, high-tech cures for a sickness that the very same industry built into your home in the first place. I am not suggesting there was a secret meeting in a dark room. I do not believe in those kinds of conspiracies. The reality is far simpler and more difficult to fight. It is a quiet agreement among those who profit to simply remain silent. They do not need to coordinate their actions. They only need to keep quiet about the alternatives. They do not mention the roof box. They do not sell the cotton. They never explain the stack effect to a homeowner who is struggling to pay their bills. They have stayed quiet for 50 years, and the grid-dependent homeowner has paid the price. We kept this knowledge alive in our community because we had to. We did not have the option to forget. When you do not have a wire running to your house, you cannot afford to lose the physical wisdom that your ancestors spent generations accumulating. We carved these lessons not into books that can be lost or ignored, but into the very timber of our homes. Every barn we raise, every farmhouse we frame, is a physical copy of the physical laws of nature. The rest of the world was given a machine to forget with, and so they forgot. Let me be useful to you. I don't want to simply stand here and lecture you on the failures of modern design. I want to give you the practical steps to reclaim the ventilation of your own home this weekend. The first place you must look is your gable vents. Almost every home built between the Second World War and the end of the 20th century features 2 triangular wooden or metal vents located at the very peaks of the gable walls in the attic. You have likely seen them from the driveway, looking like small louvered windows. From the inside of a healthy attic, those vents should show bright, clear daylight. Pick a cool morning, early, before the sun has had a chance to strike the roof shingles. Take a simple flashlight and climb into your attic space.
Look at those gable vents from the inside. If you can see clear daylight pouring through the slats, your vents are working. But in the majority of modern homes, you will see nothing but darkness. You will find that the fine wire screens behind those vents are completely choked with decades of household dust, dried paint from previous renovations, old wasp nests, and loose insulation blown in by decades of household dust, dried paint from previous renovations, old wasp nests, and loose insulation blown in by a contractor who did not care to protect the air pathways. I have crawled into attics where the gable vents were completely sealed over with expanding polyurethane foam by a homeowner who had been told it would make their house more energy efficient. They were sealing the very lungs of their home. Clean them. It will cost you nothing but 20 minutes of your time. Reach in and pull out the accumulated debris with your hands or use a simple vacuum to clear the screen. If the wire mesh has rusted away or been torn, do not leave it open to the birds and the squirrels.
Peel the old screen off and staple a new piece of 1/8-inch aluminum mesh in its place. You can buy a small roll of this mesh at any hardware store for $3. The 1/8-inch openings are the precise size you need, small enough to keep the insects and bats out, but large enough to allow the air to move without friction. The second step is the cotton radiant shield. You can install this yourself in a single afternoon. Purchase 4 yards of plain, untreated, non-synthetic white cotton muslin. It is critical that the fabric is pure cotton, as synthetic fibers like polyester will melt under extreme heat and do not hold moisture. For safety, ensure the fabric is treated with a simple, non-toxic fire retardant, or treat it yourself with a mixture of natural borax and water. Using a standard hand stapler, secure the fabric directly to the underside of the rafters, running it along the very peak of the roof, where the rafters meet the ridge board. You want a strip about 2 feet wide, centered on the ridge, running the entire length of the attic. You do not need to cover the entire slope of the roof. You only need to break the radiant path at the hottest point of the structure, which is the ridge. Do not use plastic tarps. Do not use synthetic vapor barriers. Those materials will trap moisture against the wooden roof deck, leading to wood rot and mold. The entire magic of the cotton is that it breathes, allowing the wood to shed its moisture while blocking the invisible radiant waves. I had a neighbor from the town nearby come to our farm 3 summers ago, asking why his second-floor bedrooms were so unbearably hot. I explained this physical shield to him. He went home, purchased $6 worth of cotton fabric, and spent 2 hours stapling it along the ridge of his attic. He called me a week later. He told me that the temperature in his upstairs bedroom had dropped 6 degrees. He said his wife had slept under a blanket in the middle of July for the first time in 20 years. $6 of material, 1 afternoon of physical labor, and he had permanently altered the thermodynamics of his home. The third step is the nighttime draft, and this is the practice that most modern homeowners completely neglect, which is a tragedy because it is the key that locks the entire system together. When the sun goes down and the outside air temperature drops below 80 degrees, which it almost always does, even in the deepest parts of summer, late around 10 or 11 o'clock, you must initiate the night draft. To do this safely and effectively, we do not use mechanical pumps or dangerous heat sources. Instead, we utilize the natural laws of windward and leeward air pressure. When a breeze moves across a landscape and strikes a house, it creates a zone of high pressure on the side facing the wind, the windward side. As the air is forced up and over the roof, it creates a corresponding zone of low pressure on the opposite side of the building, the leeward side. Go to the shaded, cool side of your house, the side that has been protected from the afternoon sun. Open 2 or 3 of the lowest windows on this windward side, just 3 or 4 inches. Then go to the opposite side of the house, the leeward side, and open the upper windows or crack your attic hatch open slightly. What happens next is a beautiful display of natural fluid dynamics. The hot air that is accumulated inside your attic space during the day has already begun to rise and escape through your newly cleared gable vents. As this hot air leaves, it draws the cooler, dense night air in through the low windward windows you opened. The pressure differential created by the wind blowing over the roof deck acts as a natural siphon, pulling that cool air through your living spaces, up through the center of the house, and out through the attic vents. You will feel the physical reality of this movement within minutes. If you stand in the hallway near the stairs around midnight, you will feel a soft, cool current of air moving past your ankles.
It is not the artificial, chilly blast of an air conditioner. It is a gentle, natural draft. By morning, the entire wooden structure of your home, the heavy framing timbers, the wall studs, the floor joists, will have shed the heat they absorb during the day. Wood is a thermal mass. It holds heat long after the sun is set. By pulling that cool night air through the framing, you reset the thermal baseline of the entire house. When the next hot day begins, your home starts from a much lower temperature. Your air conditioner, if you still choose to run it, does not have to fight a preheated structure. 40 minutes of physical work. A flashlight, a hand stapler, a roll of aluminum mesh, and a few yards of cotton cloth. Less than $40 in materials at the absolute most, and many of you can complete it for under 10. Now, let me address the arguments that the modern building industry will throw at you, because if you do not understand the physics behind their objections, they will easily convince you to return to their expensive, sealed systems. The first objection is always about moisture. The modern energy auditor or insulation contractor will tell you that if you open up your attic and allow the outside air to move through it, you will introduce humidity. They will warn you about mold, about wood rot, and about the destruction of your roof framing. They have the physical reality completely backwards. Moving air does not cause moisture problems. Trapped air causes moisture problems. The hand-hewn oak beams in our barn have stood through over a century of humid summers and freezing winters. The wood is as dry and sound today as the day it was cut from the forest. It smells sweet when you scrape the surface. Why? Because the air is constantly moving. The barn breathes. The house breathes. When warm, humid air is allowed to move freely, the water vapor passes through the space without condensing. But when you seal an attic with plastic vapor barriers and spray foam, you trap that moisture inside. The temperature fluctuations between the hot roof deck and the cool attic floor cause that trapped water vapor to reach its dew point. It condenses on the cold surfaces, saturating the wood and creating the perfect dark, damp environment for mold to thrive. You are not inviting mold by opening your vents. You are evicting it. The second objection is about the modern materials already installed in your home, specifically synthetic spray foam. Many of you have been told to spray thick layers of polyurethane foam directly against the underside of your roof rafters to create what they call a hot roof design. If you have this system in your home, do not blindly attempt to rip it out. Cured spray foam is incredibly difficult and expensive to remove, and doing so without understanding the structural engineering of your roof can cause severe damage. Instead, use this as a warning. Understand that a hot roof system turns your roof deck into a permanent heat battery that cannot shed its thermal load naturally. If you are experiencing high cooling bills with a foamed roof, do not add more foam. Consult an independent building physicist or a professional energy specialist who does not sell insulation. Ask them to evaluate your ventilation pathways and see if passive venting can be restored without destroying your existing materials. Passive ventilation is not a violation of building codes. It predates the existence of building codes. Modern international residential codes require a minimum of 1 square foot of net-free ventilation area for every 300 square feet of attic floor space. That is a minimum requirement, not a maximum limit. You are legally allowed to have as much passive ventilation as your roof can handle. And as for your shingle warranty, almost every major asphalt shingle manufacturer explicitly states that their warranty is void if the shingles are installed over an unventilated roof deck. They know that extreme heat destroys their product. By increasing the passive airflow beneath the roof deck, you are not voiding your warranty, you are protecting it. The contractor who tells you otherwise is often the same man who will return in 3 years to sell you a new $5,000 air conditioning compressor because your old one burned out from running 18 hours a day against a sealed attic. I am not saying he is a dishonest man. He is simply a victim of a system that has been taught wrong by people who were paid to teach wrong. That chain of incorrect instruction goes back 50 years. You do not have to remain at the end of it. Last autumn, after we had finished raising a new barn for a young family in our community, I sat on the porch with our bishop. We were drinking coffee as the sun went down, and a young man from the town who had volunteered to help us that day asked the bishop why we chose to live without the modern conveniences of the grid. He expected a sermon on religion. The bishop did not talk about religion. He looked out over the farm and said this: "The people on the grid think we reject technology because we are afraid of it. That is not the truth. We reject technology when it makes us depend on people we do not know, on systems we cannot maintain ourselves, and on corporations that do not care if our families are comfortable or cold. We accept technology when it makes us more capable, more independent, and more able to take care of our own. The roof box is technology. The Gable vent is technology. The cotton shield is technology. They are simply technologies that belong to us. We can build them with our own hands. We can repair them with our own tools, and then they will continue to keep us cool when the wires fall and the lights go out. They are ours. I have carried those words with me through many seasons, because the bishop was not just speaking about our community. He was speaking about what you have surrendered. You have given up the simple, basic ability to keep your own family comfortable in your own home.
You have handed that responsibility over to a utility company that did not even exist when your home's foundation was poured. You pay them thousands of dollars every year for the permission to be comfortable. And it has never occurred to you that there is something deeply strange about that arrangement, because you were born into it. You did not choose to forget this physical wisdom. It was taken from you, slowly, one building code at a time, one sales pitch at a time, one contractor at a time, until you arrived at a house you cannot ventilate, a roof you cannot maintain, an attic you have never crawled into, and an electric bill you cannot question. I am not suggesting you change your life. I am not asking you to trade your automobile for a horse or your phone for a handwritten letter. I am simply asking you to do one physical thing this weekend. Take a flashlight, climb the ladder, and look into your attic. See if your home is allowed to breathe or if it is suffocating under the weight of a sealed roof. Remember that the people who cleared the forests and built this country with nothing but their hands possessed a deep, practical understanding of the physical world, an understanding we are only just beginning to remember. Stay cool, stay self-reliant, and look to the wisdom of the rafters.